Welcome to the Lanyap, a little something extra for your health, your family, and your future. Hosted by Caroline Badon, wife, mama, fitness and wellness guru, fashion and iced coffee lover, and the marketing director and podcaster for the Fussell Group. This podcast is your go-to for real conversations, expert insight, and the heart behind the Fussell Group's mission. Because life's not just about getting by, it's about showing up with purpose and serving the community with what matters. Let's get into it.
Welcome back to the Lanyap podcast, where we share a little something extra that makes our community and our people so special. Today's episode is an incredibly important one. We're talking about something that affects far more families than we actually realize, domestic violence, and the incredible work being done right here on the North Shore to support our survivors of domestic violence. So joining me today is Amanda from Safe Harbor. Thank you so much for joining. Safe Harbor is a nonprofit organization dedicated to providing safety, support, and hope to individuals and children who are experiencing domestic violence. Through emergency shelter, counseling, advocacy, and community education, Safe Harbor has become a lifeline for so many who are navigating some of the most intense and difficult moments of their lives. So Ashley, I will let you take it from there. Thank you so much for being here, for the work that you and your team do for those in our community. I'll start by letting you tell us a little bit about yourself and Safe Harbor.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me this morning.
Of course.
But I've been with Safe Harbor for about 3 years now. Started as a volunteer. Not nowhere near where I wanted to head in life, but I still find myself here every single day because I feel like I'm not ready to leave this very important mission.
Right. So what types of services does Safe Harbor provide to survivors and their families?
Our biggest one is the emergency shelter. We do try to keep that one for those who are immediately trying to flee domestic violence. And when we can't offer that, we do transport people to the other shelters around the state. Or if they're from out of town somewhere, we'll provide flight tickets and things like that.
Oh, wow.
We'll file protective orders. We have a staff, not a staff attorney, but like we provide application for a land, which is an attorney provided by the state, in case they need a divorce and or custody gets a little bit too intricate. We assist with kind of those things. Really, anything between helping them get a new job, a place to live, things like that. We'll try to help from
That's
the ground up.
incredible. So what did you do before Safe Harbor?
I actually used to work in a construction company before that.
Okay, and what led you to Safe Harbor? How'd you find them? Like, what piqued your interest?
It was at one of my little sister's birthday parties, and one of the parents, we were talking about how I was about to finish college with a criminal degree, and I was working in a construction company, and she said, "Well, I'm on the board, and our gala is coming up. How about you come to volunteer?" And I started
wow.
volunteering. I started volunteering doing children's support group, and then I was like, you know what, I kind of like this. I kind of want to do this, and I
Yeah.
started as an advocate.
It's such a great cause
Yes,
and something to be an advocate for.
yes.
So many people think they understand domestic violence, but it can look very different in real life. What are some forms that people might not recognize?
I always say that the subtle things are like just the subtle behaviors, everyone just thinks bruises and physical, but it's the emotional, it's putting you down, your confidence and things like that. Those you don't really always get to see, but they're there. Financial is a big one that people don't really, from the outside, you don't see the financial abuse, but it's also part of domestic violence as well.
Right. So what are common warning signs for someone that is in an abusive relationship?
Usually like kind of no long if you have a friend that's no longer like hanging out with everybody, to always like their whole personality almost becomes surrounded by this new relationship and this new person. It's missing out, like I said, missing out on things, and you can tell their behaviors and manners will start to kind of
Yeah, you
change. No
just
longer
kinda
like the life of a friend that they used to be.
right. So why do you think, or is it a discussion at Safe Harbor, so many people stay in these abusive relationships?
A lot of times it's just there is love in there. There's good times. In every
Mhm.
relationships, there's a good time, and it's very hard to try to uh, just walk away. It's not as easy, and sometimes you're put in such a position where you're so codependent of that
Mhm.
partner that you kind of find it really hard to see what is life outside of it.
Right. Right. So when someone reaches out to Safe Harbor for help, what happens next?
We usually do this thing called a crisis call, where we get information on the person, we get information on the abuser. We, if they request to not answer information on the abuser, that's perfectly fine. But we just get those basic information to ask them, like, are you looking just to talk with somebody? Because we have counseling, we have support group,
Hmm.
we have case management. Like, are you actively trying to flee? Because some people will call and they're just looking for basic information to see what resources we provide, if it's even like something feasible for them to leave.
Right.
So we take it on from there once the call is made.
So what does the journey look like from crisis, like from them calling? So say this is like one of your worst cases and someone calls in. So from crisis to rebuilding their life.
It's a long journey. I know that for shelter purposes, federally, we say we're a 45-day program. However, it is not feasible to get a job, get a vehicle, and all of that within 45 days.
Hmm.
So it really kind of depends. But from the minute someone calls and they say they're ready to leave now, they have to leave now, and we have the shelter availability, by that afternoon, we're trying to get that person in. Or if they say, I can't leave this afternoon, the abuser goes into work tomorrow or
Hmm.
something, we'll work around that time frame that is safer for them.
Right.
um, and we'll get them in. And as soon as we get them in, trying to fill out what are the needs, whether you need document replacement, all of those things, getting all of that lined up. If a protective order is needed, getting all of those first steps lined up before we can think about getting jobs and all of that.
So if someone calls and says, I need to get out now, and say the abuser is home, how does Safe Harbor go about getting that person safely?
Um, we usually have like safety tips on during a crisis call,
Hmm.
safety planning of what to do, and especially if they're in a house that is very difficult. We usually send, like, if they don't have their own means of transportation, we'll send an Uber, but we can't send an Uber to a house where we're jeopardizing also that person.
Right.
So sometimes we'll say, well, can you take a walk around the corner or something?
Hmm.
Or do you usually go to the grocery store?
Hmm.
Things like that. And trying to find an alternative that is common to their routine, but we can use that as
And a way
a
out.
way out. Yes.
So, how does Safe Harbor support children who have experienced trauma in the home? So, say there's a mother and she has two children with her and they're experiencing this domestic violence and she wants to get out, but she's not leaving her babies.
Oh yeah, no. Uh, we definitely assist with the children as well. We do have support group for the children. We try to. A lot of the children that grew up in domestic violence are in a constant state of flight or flight,
Hmm.
um, and with that comes, like, trying to modify, like, understanding the behaviors and things, because
Right.
we tend to have a lot of kids that, a lot of the boys, like, they witness the aggression, so they think that, well, that's the way I get what I want. So
Hmm.
trying to teach non-conflict ways
Right.
to get things, or for the girls, trying to teach them that that's not what a relationship model should be like.
Hmm.
1 in 13 girls who grew up in domestic violence end up in a domestic violence relationship themselves, and
Hmm.
1 in 6 boys who grew up in domestic violence turn out to be an aggressor themselves.
Mm.
So trying to stop that pattern.
Right.
um, it's also very conflicting because you love your parents,
Right.
but you're also growing up seeing something very awful going on between your parents. So trying to also let them not feel guilty for
Hmm.
having some type of resentment from one parent is one of the things we try to work with them.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, do they get to stay with their mothers?
Yes. So our shelter, we provide, it's for mom and children. Weekend domestic violence obviously happens with men as well. So we do provide services for men.
Yeah.
If we have children in the shelter, we'll likely place them elsewhere for safety reasons. It can be a little traumatizing for women to be in shelter with a man. So we usually try to separate that.
Hmm.
Um, but we provide either way, if with
Amazing.
children, without children.
Yeah. So, what is the most powerful transformation you've seen while you've been at Safe Harbor?
I think it's when after in the beginning, you're usually so into the chaos and you feel like it's never going to end.
Hmm.
But then seeing the ones that continue to receive services after and come to group and therapy once they've kind of have gotten on their feet
Right.
and now are like, are able to see that one day they really thought it was better, they were better off going back because they thought they would never get better for themselves and for their children, and
Hmm.
seeing how they are now, that's what makes it all worth it.
So fulfilling.
Yes.
Ugh. So how can people in our community help Safe Harbor?
Um, Usually by supporting us with our fundraisers. 100% of our funds do go back to all the services we provide.
Hmm.
And the donations and stuff, like that becomes very helpful. Um, but usually, yes, our biggest fundraisers, one just passed on March 7th, which is Cruising the Lake. And then
Hmm.
we have one coming up in September 19th, the Real Superheroes of Safe Harbor.
Okay. So what types of donations or volunteer support make the biggest difference whenever they're helping Safe Harbor?
People don't usually think about it, but like the cleaning products, the self-care
Yeah.
products, usually it's very hard for us to come around like just the personal hygiene.
Hmm.
As women, we love to get together and like put ourselves together in the mornings, and that's
Hmm.
something that we want to provide that for them as well.
Right. To make them feel comfortable and clean
Yes,
and like they're keeping,
and the
you know,
self-esteem, it's so
raises your
helpful.
self-esteem and confidence and all the things. That is
Yes.
so true. We just touched on the event that just passed. Tell us a little bit about the one coming up in September.
So usually that one, we have candidates from around our community
Hmm.
uh, who are racing against each other on who can raise the most funds to gain the title of the real superhero of Safe Harbor for that year.
Hmm.
Um, it's usually lots of fun. It's at the Oak Harbor Center in Slidell. Um, Tickets should go on sale hopefully by the end of this month, if
Okay.
not early on next month, and sponsorships and things like that will
Yeah.
also be out. Yeah.
Sounds amazing. So why let's touch a little bit of I mean, we have already a little bit, but I want to touch more on why community awareness is so important when it comes to domestic violence and what do you wish more people understood about this issue?
I think that as a society, as a community, it's so easy for all of us to say, well, why doesn't she leave?
Mhm.
And I always, just not to blame our community or anything like that, but just to look into the perspective of St. Tammany on the why doesn't she leave? Well, St. Tammany isn't an affordable place to reside in. So
Mhm.
leaving uh, a relationship where your partner either brought in all the money or the majority of the money, it's very hard to start working if you haven't worked in a long time
Mhm.
to afford living in St. Tammany.
Right, that is a
Um,
good point.
and also, if your vehicles were to your spouse's name and you no longer have access to that vehicle, we don't have a public transportation. Ubers
Mhm.
are not cheap here, so it's just not being able to understand the barriers kind of that we have
Right.
here um, before we just say, well, why don't you just leave? But also, it's very hard to just leave when you're also um, we're so community and family oriented
In
that
Louisiana.
yes, in
Yeah.
Louisiana as a whole, we're so community and family oriented that we're very much so just almost want to always keep the family together. You don't want your
Yeah.
kids to be separated and things like that. So that really tugs on the why doesn't she leave?
Yeah, it's a good point. So how can friends and families support someone in an abusive relationship?
We usually just recommend to listen to them. It is, I know a lot of people will bring it up on the issue of like, well, he does this, and why can't you see that this
Mhm.
isn't right? Instead of bringing up what the opposite partner is doing wrong and what they're doing could be controlling, bring up what you have noticed that has changed in them.
Mhm.
Because as someone, if you're in a marriage with someone for so long or in a relationship for so long, you're bound to protect that person. It is what we do. So coming on hot with well, he does this and this, that person will immediately shut down and no longer listen to you and not come to you
Right.
for help and assistance. So maybe bring it up, hey, I've noticed that you've been absent from work for a little bit. Is there something I can help you with?
Right.
Is there something going on that you need assistance or something? Like
point
making
out
it
the
about
change
them.
in their behavior.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. I totally agree and understand. Because when you approach someone about someone they love and what they're doing wrong, they can very well shut down and become
Yes.
defensive. Yeah. So if someone is listening right now and needs help, what should they do? Safe Harbor is here to be a resource to our community, the men and women and children in our community. And what is the first thing they should do if they need help?
The first thing would be calling us. You can look it up on Google, have the hotline. We had a lady not that long ago who said she just typed it in Chat GPT and it told her whatever was the
Amazing.
resource in her area,
Mm-hmm.
or even can even call the national or the state hotline. It all pings back to whatever is the closest to your cell tower, which would be us.
Yeah.
And we do always say it has to be the individual calling. We always get family members that call, and we can provide resources for those family members. But if the survivor is what we call them, the survivor is not ready to leave, pushing them will not make them want to accept that help. So
Right.
they have to make that call so they can understand if they are ready to leave.
Exactly. Exactly. So what is a message of hope you would like to leave our viewers with today? It's a message of hope you would give someone if they feel trapped in an abusive situation.
You don't have to go through it alone. I know many people in that situation think that it's just happening to them. It is not. It is a crime, and you do not deserve to live in that situation, neither you, your children, or your family members, because it affects the entire family. There's always a better side. It seems impossible at first, but there's always a better outcome.
Amanda, thank you so much for being here today. The incredible work you and your entire team at Safe Harbor are doing for our community it's just life-changing for some people. The compassion, strength, and support you provide to women, men, and children during some of the most difficult moments of their lives truly makes a difference.
Well, thank you for having me.
For everyone listening, this conversation, if it moved you in any way, I encourage you to consider supporting Safe Harbor and the important work they are doing right here on the North Shore. In honor of Women's History Month, we are hosting a Safe Harbor drive throughout the entire month of March. Donations can be dropped off here at the Fussell Group, at Curedon Columbia, or the L Lounge. All the details on the items Safe Harbor needs most right now can be found on our social media pages. So please take a moment to check that out and help if you can. Together we can support the women and family and the men and the children in our community who need it most. Amanda, thank you again.
Thank you again for having me this morning.
Thanks for joining us on the Lanyap. We hope today gave you the little something extra that you needed. Be sure to subscribe, share this with a friend, and follow us on social at FGIALA for more tools to live well and make the right decisions for your health and future. Until next time, stay golden, stay the course, and never forget, we'll be there for you.